that sense of what is it, legacy or continuity. Are those sort of things important to you?
I think as you get older, they may seems more important to me. Sometimes they're just coincidental. I didn't say I joined the NUS because my father was there. It's just we couldn't afford it. He was a civil servant, PermSec, but in those days PermSecs weren't paid, market salaries as they are now. I'm not against it, but they didn't get it. So it was whether I could get to NUS or not, right? And I managed to. So I think when look back in your life, there are these coincidences, these patterns, which you can be quite proud of. In my book, I also write about my mother's family. My mother actually is a very old Singapore family, 5 generations, and her granduncle was a donor to my school. So I guess part of getting older is that you look back your life, your forefathers' lives, and hopefully your children's future, and see what it could add up to. Singapore is a pretty young country, and I think if you can find these threads, I think they're not bad things to emphasize.
True. Also, in your line of work, you're doing a lot of connecting with fresh, new people as well, right? And a lot of the Silvers are starting to lose those connections, like sort of falling back on old friends and classmates and that sort of thing. Is what you're doing helpful in sort of keeping you mentally active and engaged, and you see that as of course it is definitely a positive thing, I would think, but is that what you want to do, or do you want to just at some point say, okay, I'm gonna just sit back, relax?
Well, I guess I'm 63, and the pandemic just happened, so I actually don't feel I'm in a let me retire now mode. You can start to see the end. You should, because you don't have that much time left, but you should still be in the mode of how much do I want to do, how much makes purpose doing. I don't think we should be busy for just keeping busy sake, but I'm quite conscious of the fact that there are books I want to finish, like this one. I'm happy to have done it before it's time to stop. And of course I question whether you ever really stop. The heart of the question, I think, is also how do you work and how do you play with the group you grew up with and people coming along the way. Some people quite consciously, perhaps artificially, take on mentees. I don't. I do interact with younger people. I do try to keep such with my old group. Now again, some people really make an art of it. They join all these old boy associations and fabulously have get-togethers. I don't particularly. I do have a bunch of close friends. I've been close to them for years, decades, but I don't consciously do the OBA thing, Old Boys Association alumni. So I think as we go forward, you should try to do it as naturally as possible. That's my view. Some thought, some purpose, but be confident that some of what you do, whether it's a book or think tank or teaching, connects to young people, and then carry that relation forward, into the next circle. So it's been my pleasure as a lawyer to see, as a law professor, see some of my students become partners in my firm, and still talk to me. Because when you teach people, you never know whether you taught them right or wrong, or whether they like you or doesn't like you. I, in a way, coming back to the book, I kind of hope that. I mean, I didn't write this book for my father's generation only. I think a lot of this preaching, teaching your grandfather how to suck eggs, if I tell them Singapore was simpler, of course they knew it. There's a section here that talks about all the old kind of restaurants that people went to. They know that. They lived through that even more than I do. Right? But I think part of the lesson is to share with youngsters what's going on and come back to connection. I hope the book is written in a fairly interesting, modern way, rather than just like a whole bunch of old man stories.
Now, what I found interesting about the book was how the stories run parallel of what your father did as a professional and the personal side to him, the family man,
yes,
and his interaction with you and the others. And I get a sense of Singapore back then, especially if you're younger and hadn't lived through that. But also you get a sense of what family life was like then. And you see the contrasts today, right?
Yes.
Was that the intent of that, to kind of highlight the
I
differences?
did want to talk about family life, and I didn't want to gloss it over. Nostalgia is a very dangerous thing in a book, where like last year is always better than now. And you know, without giving all the family secrets away, you got to be fairly truthful. So some family members might be upset that I've been a bit tough, or some people might say you weren't very fair to the relationship. I tried my best to be fair, discreet in certain ways, but tell as much truth as you can. What emerges? The pioneers really saw the purpose of making progress of Singapore and their own lives.